My fiance's 8-year-old smirked and said to my son at dinner, "You can't sit with us. Mom says your dad is temporary." My son looked at me, didn't say anything. I quietly stood up and left. That night, my fiance texted, "Rent's due tomorrow?" I replied, "Figure it out." Next morning, complete panic, Lewis had spent half his life building things that were meant to last. Walls that stood through winter storms. Roof frames that carried the weight of snow. Staircases that didn't creak under pressure because he measured twice, cut once, and never took shortcuts just because no one would notice. At 38, he was the kind of construction worker people trusted without thinking about it. Broad shoulders, rough hands, steady voice. He showed up early, stayed late, and fixed what other people ignored until it became dangerous. He was good at his job. He just hadn't realized how bad he'd become at recognizing rot in his personal life. By the time he got engaged to Lillian, most people around him thought he'd finally caught a break. She was pretty, polished, and knew how to make a room tilt in her direction without raising her voice. She had a soft laugh, expensive taste she disguised as simple things, and a little girl named Emma who could be sweet in public and sharp in private. Lewis had a son, Noah, 10 years old, quiet and observant, the kind of child who noticed everything and asked about it later when the room had gone still. Lewis's ex-wife had left years ago, first emotionally, then physically, then completely. She sent birthday texts and excuses in about equal measure. So Lewis had raised Noah the only way he knew how, with consistency. Lunch packed before sunrise. Clean clothes. Homework checked after 10-hour shifts. Little league games with work dust still on his boots. He never called himself a good father, but he made sure his son never had to wonder whether he'd be there. That was why the dinner hit as hard as it did. It happened on a Thursday. Rain tapped the windows of Lillian's rental house. The one Lewis had gradually started paying more and more for without ever having his name added to the lease. The kitchen smelled like roasted chicken, garlic, and the kind of expensive candle Lillian always lit before company, even when company was just the four of them. Emma sat beside her mother with a pink cup and a smug little smile. Noah came in a second later carrying his plate carefully in both hands, looking for a place to sit. Lewis was reaching for the salt when Emma looked at Noah and said, perfectly clearly, "You can't sit with us." Noah froze. Lewis looked up. Emma leaned back in her chair, enjoying the silence she'd created. "Mom says your dad is temporary," she added. The room went dead. Noah turned and looked at Lewis. Not at Lillian, not at Emma. At Lewis, he didn't say a word. That was the worst part. If he had cried, Lewis could have moved faster. If he'd yelled, Lewis would have had something obvious to protect him from. But Noah just stood there, holding his plate, waiting for the truth to show itself on the adults' faces. Lewis looked at Lillian. She gave a strained little laugh and lifted a hand. "Emma, that's rude." Rude. Not false. Not "where did you hear that?" Not absolutely not. Just rude. Lewis felt something cold open in his chest. Emma shrugged, still wearing that tiny smile. "You said he's not really staying. You said we shouldn't get too used to them." Lillian's face tightened. "Emma, enough." Again, not denying it. Lewis saw Noah's fingers shift under the plate. He was gripping it too hard. Lewis stood slowly. "Come here, buddy," he said. Noah obeyed immediately, moving around the table without looking at anyone else. Lewis took the plate from his hands and set it on the counter. Lillian stared at him. "Are you seriously doing this?" Lewis kept his voice quiet. "Doing what?" "Making a scene." He almost laughed. Instead, he grabbed Noah's jacket from the hook and handed it to him. Noah slipped it on without a word. Lillian pushed back her chair. "Lewis, she's 8. He met her eyes. 8-year-olds repeat what they hear." For once, Lillian had no quick answer. Emma's face changed slightly, confusion replacing the smugness. She had expected discomfort, maybe some awkward adult chatter. She had not expected the evening to split open. Lewis took his keys. "Come on, Noah." Lillian followed them into the hallway. "You're overreacting." He stopped at the door and turned. "No," he said. "I'm reacting exactly enough." Then he walked out with his son into the cold, wet dark. The truck ride was quiet. except for windshield wipers and the low hum of the heater. Lewis kept both hands on the wheel and tried not to replay the scene in his head, but it kept coming back anyway. Emma's tone, Noah's face, Lillian's laugh. Finally, at a red light, Noah asked, "What does temporary mean?" Lewis swallowed. "It means not forever." Noah stared at the dashboard. "Did she mean you?" "I don't know exactly what she meant," Lewis said carefully, "but I know she shouldn't have let you hear anything like that." Noah nodded once. Lewis hated how old that nod looked. He drove past home and took Noah to a diner near the highway instead. Pancakes for dinner, fries on the side. Hot chocolate, even though it was late. The waitress, an older woman with tired eyes and kind instincts, called Noah sweetheart and refilled Lewis's coffee twice without asking why. He barely touched it. Noah finally spoke halfway through the meal. "Are we going back tonight?" Lewis looked at his son for a long moment. It should have been a simple answer, but it carried 2 years of ignored warning signs behind it. He'd met Lillian when she was redoing her kitchen and arguing with an employee at a hardware store. Lewis stepped in, helped her find the right fittings, and she smiled at him like he had rescued her from something enormous. That smile had gone a long way. He was tired then, tired from work, tired from parenting alone, tired from pretending none of that got to him. Lillian made him feel chosen. At first, she praised everything about him. His reliability, his work ethic, the way Noah listened to him, the fact that he felt safe. She said she was done with selfish men. Said she wanted a stable future. Said Emma needed a good male role model. Lewis heard what he wanted to hear. Then the asks started. A broken fence, a leaking pipe, cabinets that needed rehanging, a bathroom floor with soft spots. He fixed all of it. She kissed him, fed him, thanked him in that warm, low voice that made every favor sound intimate. Then came money. Just this month, because her freelance payment was late. Just the utilities, because her ex was behind again. Just half the rent, because Emma's school expenses had piled up. Just until things settled. Things never settled. By the time he was sleeping there most nights, Lewis was covering more than half the household expenses, buying groceries, paying for small emergencies, and carrying the invisible financial weight of a home. He was still treated like a guest inside. There had been signs, Lillian referring to the place as my house whenever they argued, Emma calling Noah your kid instead of my brother, or even his name after Lillian had once corrected her for using family words too quickly. Separate holiday photos, separate traditions. Little boundaries that always somehow protected Lillian and Emma's comfort first. And every time Lewis tried to talk practically, lease, shared budget, long-term plans, Lillian accused him of making love sound like a contract. Sitting across from Noah in the diner, he realized that was exactly what she had been avoiding. Anything that would make his place real. "No," Lewis said at last. "We're not going back tonight." Noah looked relieved so quickly Lewis nearly closed his eyes. He took him to his sister Mara's apartment. Mara opened the door in old sweatpants and one raised eyebrow. "You look like somebody died." Lewis stepped inside with Noah. "Not yet." She looked at his face, then Noah's, and immediately moved aside. Couch is made. Extra blankets in the hall closet. Only after Noah was asleep under a comforter in the living room did Mara sit across from Lewis at her tiny kitchen table and hear the whole story. When he finished, she stared at him for 5 full seconds. She laughed, "Yeah," and then asked why you were making a scene. "Yeah." Mara leaned back. "Leave her." Lewis rubbed a hand over his mouth. "That easy?" "It should be." At 11:41 p.m., his phone lit up. "Lillian, where are you?" A minute later, "Are you really punishing a child over a misunderstanding?" Then, "Emma is crying." Lewis stared at the screen. No mention of Noah. Mara read over his shoulder. There it is. Another text came in. "Rent's due tomorrow?" Lewis went still. Mara actually let out a disbelieving laugh. Wow, there it really is. He looked at that message for a long time. Something about it stripped away every last layer of confusion. Not because money itself was evil. Lewis understood money better than romance, most days. Bills were real. Rent was real. Pressure was real. But timing was truth. Her daughter had humiliated his son at dinner using words clearly learned from her mother. He had left with a child whose heart had just been quietly cracked open. And Lillian's first urgent concern was rent. He typed back, "Figure it out." Then he shut the phone off. The next morning was complete panic. When he turned the phone back on at 6:20, it exploded with notifications. Missed calls, voice messages, texts piling over each other in frantic waves. "You can't do this. He's waiting on payment. Lewis, call me now. I swear you are blowing this out of proportion. Please. If we lose this place because of your pride, I'll never forgive you." He read them all without replying. Mara poured coffee into a chipped mug and read the last few over his shoulder. "She still thinks this is about rent." "No," Lewis said. "She knows exactly what it's about. She just thinks money will drag me back." He dropped Noah at school himself that morning. The boy clung a second longer than usual at the car door, then straightened and walked inside with his backpack. Lewis stayed parked until Noah disappeared through the entrance. Then he drove to the house. Mara came with him, not because he asked, but because she ignored the concept of being unwanted when family was involved. Lillian was already outside, pacing in the driveway with her phone in hand. She looked polished in the rushed way some women manage even in crisis. Hair pulled back, lip gloss on, big sunglasses, hiding whatever expression she wanted hidden. The second Lewis stepped out of the truck, she marched toward him. "Finally, I'm here for my stuff. And Noah's." She stared. "Excuse me?" "You heard me." Her mouth opened, then hardened. "So this is your plan? Abandon us because Emma repeated something badly?" Lewis shoved his hands into his jacket pockets. "Did you say I was temporary?" Lillian took off her sunglasses. "I said I didn't want Emma getting attached too quickly." He just looked at her. She got sharper. "That is not the same thing. It is to a child." She crossed her arms. "I was protecting my daughter. And who was protecting my son?" Lillian made a sound of irritation. "Oh my God, Lewis. Everything with you becomes dramatic. Emma is 8. She's adjusting. Blended families are complicated." "No," he said. "Complicated is figuring out schedules and school pickups. Teaching your daughter that me and my son are optional isn't complicated. It's deliberate." Her jaw tightened. "You're twisting my words." He nodded toward the house. "Funny. Emma seemed to understand them perfectly." That hit. For a second, Lillian's face showed not guilt, but calculation. Lewis recognized it too late, and all at once, the way she changed tone depending on what worked. Soft when she wanted comfort, angry when she wanted compliance, wounded when she wanted rescue. She took a breath and tried softness. "Lewis," she said, "quieter now. I am under a lot of pressure. The rent, Emma, my ex barely helping, trying to make this family work. I need you to stop making me the villain." He almost smiled at that. "Need me," he repeated. Her eyes flashed. "Yes, I need you. There it is. What is wrong with that?" He stepped closer, voice low and steady. "Nothing, unless that's all you ever needed." Color rose in her cheeks. "That's unfair." "No. What's unfair is asking my son to live in a house where your daughter feels comfortable telling him he doesn't belong." Emma's face appeared briefly behind the front window curtain, then vanished. Lewis glanced at it and felt a brief, complicated ache. Kids said cruel things, yes, but kids also got shaped by whatever was normal in their homes. Emma had not invented exclusion. She had inherited it. Lillian followed his gaze. "You are making this bigger than it was." "No," he said. "I'm finally seeing the size of it." He walked past her and into the house. Packing didn't take long. That fact humiliated him more than he expected. For a man who had put so much money into that place, so little of him was actually in it. One half of a closet, a row of boots, tools in the garage, Noah's clothes in a guest room that still looked temporary even after months, a few books, chargers, work jackets. Nothing rooted. Nothing that said equal. Lillian followed him room to room at first, talking nonstop. "You're acting hurt because I tried to set boundaries. This is why I didn't want to rush everything. You always take everything personally." Then, when that failed, she switched tactics. "Do you know what this will do to Emma? You're teaching Noah that quitting is easier than communication. After all I've shared with you, you just leave. Lewis zipped a duffel bag and finally looked at her. Shared with me? He said. Lillian, I paid rent here for 11 months. 12. He stared. Her face changed the second she realized what she'd said. Lewis laughed once, without humor. You counted. That's not what I meant. No, he said. That's exactly what you meant. He walked into the kitchen and opened the junk drawer where she kept spare pens, batteries, takeout menus, and loose receipts. He found what he was looking for in under a minute. A folded late notice from the landlord. 2 months old. Then another envelope tucked under it. Utility warning. And a credit card bill past due. Lewis turned slowly. Lillian had gone pale. You told me things were just tight this month. They were. No, he said. They were a mess before me. I just kept you from feeling it. That's cruel. It's true. She sat down hard at the kitchen table. I can fix this. He looked around the room. The pendant lights he had installed, the drawer slide he'd repaired, the cabinet door he'd adjusted 3 times because she kept slamming it crooked, the refrigerator full of groceries he bought 3 days earlier. He suddenly saw the whole relationship the way a contractor saw a house stripped to studs. Not warm, not romantic, load-bearing lies. I'm sure you'll try, he said. He carried the last bags to the truck. When he came back in for his toolbox, Lillian was crying at the table. Real tears this time, sliding down carefully made-up cheeks. You're ruining everything, she whispered. He lifted the heavy metal box with one hand. No, he said. I'm refusing to keep paying for something that was never really mine. Then he left. The fallout came fast. The first week was anger, texts about abandonment, betrayal, emotional immaturity, how he'd traumatized Emma, how Noah would grow up learning to run from conflict, how a real man didn't withdraw financial support to prove a point. Lewis answered none of it. The second week brought guilt. Emma misses you. She doesn't understand. I can't believe you'd punish a child. Still nothing. Then came the threat. You used my trust to control this household. Lewis finally replied once, by email. Do not contact Noah. Any further accusations in writing will be kept for legal purposes. That slowed her down. What sped Lewis up was what he found when he started untangling his finances. Auto payments he'd forgotten he set up. A store card opened for house renovations that had charges for makeup, boutique clothing, children's recital costumes, and a hotel spa package he had never heard of. Utility accounts linked to his bank. A streaming package with premium add-ons. Small amounts siphoned so regularly they had stopped feeling visible. Mara sat with him at her table while he spread the statements out. She was bleeding you in teaspoons, she muttered. Lewis nodded. That was exactly it. Not one dramatic theft. Just steady extraction. Quiet enough that a tired man with a good heart kept telling himself it was normal. He disputed what he could. Canceled what he could. Closed what was in his name. Then he rented a small duplex on the other side of town. 2 bedrooms, cheap carpet, crooked fence. A patch of yard barely big enough for a grill and a folding chair. But the first night there, Noah walked into his room, sat on the mattress on the floor, and said, "This one feels like it's really mine." Lewis had to turn away for a second. He worked overtime that month on a school gym addition, hauling steel studs, and supervising a younger crew that still thought being tired was the same as being productive. The physical exhaustion helped. At the end of the day, he went home and every dollar he earned stayed where it belonged. 3 weeks later, Lillian texted from a new number. I just need help with 1 month. He blocked it. Another week, another number. If I lose this place, Emma will blame you forever. Blocked. Then a voicemail. Lewis, please. I know I made mistakes. I know I said things wrong. But you know I love you. He listened to it once while sitting in his truck outside a lumberyard. Then he deleted it. Because love that only arrived when the bill was due did not sound like love anymore. It sounded like a collection notice. The real collapse came in late spring. Lewis got a call from an unknown number while he was on a site outside the city, helping pour a foundation. This Lewis Harper? Yeah. This is Daniel Mercer, Lillian's ex-husband. Lewis stepped away from the crew and wiped sweat from his forehead with the back of his wrist. What do you want? Daniel sighed. To ask how much of that house you were paying for. Lewis said nothing. That much, huh? Lewis leaned against a pallet of rebar. Why? Because Lillian called saying she needs emergency help. Said her fiancé abandoned the family and stopped paying what he promised. Lewis looked out across the site. Men shouting, concrete truck backing in, mud and noise and reality. She say why I left. Daniel laughed without humor. Not the version I'd trust. That told Lewis enough. Daniel continued, look, I'm not calling as a friend, but I know her patterns. If she's panicking, it means the cushion disappeared. Lewis almost said, I was the cushion. Instead, he asked, why call me? Because if she tries to rewrite the story with me in it, I want facts. And because, frankly, I wondered how long it took you to figure out what kind of machine you were standing inside. After the call, Lewis sat in his truck for 10 minutes without moving. Machine. The word stayed with him. He had thought he was helping build a family. What he had actually been doing was feeding a system designed around his labor, his money, and his silence. That night, he made dinner with Noah in their duplex kitchen. Spaghetti. Garlic bread slightly burnt on one side. Noah talking about a kid at school who ate paper during math because someone dared him to. Normal. Silly. Safe. Halfway through the meal, Noah asked, are you still mad? Lewis set down his fork. About Lillian? Noah nodded. Lewis considered it honestly. Not the same way. I'm clearer now. What does that mean? It means I know I should have left sooner. Noah twirled pasta around his fork. I didn't like it there. Lewis was very still. Why didn't you say so? Noah shrugged. You seemed happy, and I thought maybe I was supposed to get used to it. Lewis closed his eyes for 1 second. That sentence nearly broke him. Kids adapted to all kinds of wrong things when they believed the adults needed them to. He got up, walked around the table, and pulled Noah into a hug. You never have to get used to being unwanted, he said quietly. Noah hugged him back, all elbows and warmth. Okay, summer came easier after that. Lewis built Noah a desk from leftover plywood and sanded it smooth. They painted his room dark green because Noah said it looked like a forest in a movie where something cool happens. They planted tomatoes in buckets on the back step. Lewis even took one whole Sunday off just to drive them to a lake and do absolutely nothing useful. The strangest change was internal. He stopped waking up with that low, constant dread of someone else's problem waiting to be dropped in his lap. He stopped checking his bank account before buying groceries. He stopped feeling guilty every time he sat down. He laughed more, slept better, ate slower. He also noticed things he used to miss, like how Noah talked more when the house felt settled, how children bloomed in calm the way plants did in sunlight, how little peace actually required once nobody was weaponizing it. In August, Mara came over for burgers on the grill and watched Lewis fixing a loose hinge on the back gate. You know, she said, sipping beer from the bottle, you seem lighter. Lewis kept working the screwdriver, probably because I'm not paying rent for an emotional hostage situation anymore. Mara barked out a laugh. There's the brother I know. He smiled, but only briefly. The truth was, he still felt ashamed sometimes. Not for leaving, for staying as long as he had. He'd lie in bed and remember every excuse he made for Lillian. Every time Noah had gone quiet and Lewis told himself the adjustment just needed time. Every bill he paid because it was easier than conflict. Every practical conversation Lillian turned into an accusation about romance. He had wanted the relationship to work so badly that he treated warning signs like temporary weather. But rot didn't go away because you hoped hard enough. It spread. In early fall, Lillian sent one last message by email. I hope you're happy. Lewis stared at the sentence. Months ago, he would have felt compelled to defend himself, explain, clarify, soften, offer something. Now he simply wrote back, I'm peaceful. Then he archived the thread. That December, almost a year after the dinner, Lewis and Noah decorated a Christmas tree in the duplex living room. It was lopsided and too small, and one strand of lights only worked if you twisted the wire near the plug and wedged it under the tree stand just right. Mara came over with cookies and too many opinions about ornament placement. Noah made paper snowflakes and taped them to the windows. Music played low, the heater clicked on and off. At one point, Noah stood in the middle of the room, looking around at the mess, boxes, ribbon, lights, crumbs, and smiled. "This feels like a real family," he said. Lewis looked at him. "What makes it feel real?" Noah shrugged, smiling wider. "Nobody has to ask if they belong." Lewis had to look away for a second, because that was it. That was the whole lesson, cut cleaner than any board he'd ever measured. Belonging should not feel like probation. Love should not depend on invoices. And when a child tells the truth, adults were trying to keep blurred. You listen. Later that night, after Mara left and Noah had gone to bed, Lewis stood alone by the small tree with only the colored lights on. Outside, snow had started falling in slow, quiet flakes. He thought about the man he had been a year earlier. Tired, hopeful, useful, so eager to be chosen that he accepted being treated like a temporary structure holding up someone else's life. Not anymore. He would still help people. He would still build, still work, still show up. That was who he was. But from now on, he would pay attention to where he was being asked to stand. Some roofs were worth carrying. Some were built on lies and would collapse no matter how much weight he took off them. And some tables, no matter how warm the light, no matter how beautiful the dishes, no matter how badly you wanted the evening to work, were not worth begging your child to sit at. Lewis turned off the tree lights and headed down the hall. Noah's bedroom door was cracked open. Inside, the boy slept with one arm flung over his pillow, breathing deep and easy. Safe, wanted, home. Lewis stood there for a moment, then quietly closed the door most of the way and went to bed. For the first time in a long time, there was no panic waiting for him in the dark. Only peace.